俺の財宝か？欲しけりゃくれてやる。探せ！この世のすべてをそこに置いてきた。
Yo guys, and welcome to this new video. This early chapter contains a lot of interesting information, not only about the Wano plot itself, but also about the future and the past of One Piece. But before seeing all of that in detail, let me say I'm trying to publish a new video every day, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to always know when I upload something new. Alright, with that said, let's jump straight into it. So first, the fact that Lin Lin remembered the texture of a frog eye could be considered the first hint of her starting to regain her memories. And even if for now it's nothing more than just a food-related sensation, it could be the confirmation that her memories will actually come back at some point, which makes her an incredibly powerful loose cannon in this Wano arc, because whenever and wherever that will happen, she will completely change the flow of the plot. And this aspect is actually the only point in favor of Chopper's idea to bring her to Udon in order to save Luffy. Indeed, to achieve that, he lied to her about food. Despite knowing very well how destructive she can be when she can't find what she wants to eat, Chopper decided to act that way anyway, even if there was no reason for that. Indeed, Raizo was the one in charge of Luffy's escape, and no one asked for help, no one asked for backup. He just decided in that moment, let's bring Big Mom to Udon to free Luffy. And let's do that, causing a tantrum nobody can stop. I mean, the idea of bringing a person so dangerous away from Kuri, the center of Kinemon's operations, was the right one, but the way he did was probably not the best. But in the end, what's important is making it work for the plot, which Oda in this case does, introducing Queen's love for Haoushoku. That is only the last expression of this particular way characteristic of One Piece of introducing simple elements in the character's characterization that, despite being irrelevant fancies if taken by themselves, are at the same time irrepressible connections in the development of the plot, which never look like stretches because they suit what we actually expect that character to be like. In this case, the fact Queen loves and eats so much Haoushoku is no surprise considering his body structure and his eccentric personality, but at the same time is a must for the plot, because it's the only thing connecting Kaido's calamity to Big Mom's action once she arrives in Udon. Indeed, in that context, this simple Japanese food and the desire of eating it will become an incredibly solid excuse to start a fight between the two, which is probably what Oda wants for the plot at this point. This is probably because that will give the perfect situation for Luffy and Kawamatsu to escape without facing Queen directly. And another piece of this way of developing the plot is the Sumo tournament itself, because it on one hand allows to buy time until Big Mom actually arrives, and on the other one gives Luffy the opportunity to use this situation as a training field. Indeed, now that he has true experience in fighting with Haki, he can tell better the difference between his current level and the one he should have at this point. So the difference between what he can do now with Armament Haki and what Rayleigh could do, which is the right thing to focus on in this specific arc, because as we saw in his fight versus Kaido, the problem here is that he can't damage the Yonko apparently, not even with the Gear 4th, while on the other hand the Emperor KO'd Luffy in one hit. So just like he needed to focus on Observation Haki to overcome the Katakuri obstacle in Totlant, he now needs to focus on the Armament Haki to overcome the Kaido obstacle in Wano. And this starts to create a very clear pattern in this Yonko saga, which after making Luffy improve the Kenbiunshoku and the Haoushoku versions of Haki, eventually would most likely lead him to a sort of advanced version of Conqueror's Haki during the Shanks arc. So after exploring the possibility to see the future through the color of observation, Luffy is now focusing on that aspect of the color of armament that was actually one of the first to be introduced but was kind of forgotten along the way, the possibility to deflect attacks, which was used for the first time by Sentomaru in Sabaody. And following this path, Shanks would probably allow him to improve his Haoushoku to the point he would be able to damage with it surrounding objects. By the way, it looks like Hyogoro knows Rayleigh's name, and being Wano an isolationist country, this means that the two of them met directly, suggesting again that the Yakuza boss had a very important role in Oden's story. Anyway, in this case it looks like Luffy won't be the only one to train, since the dialogue between the new but great character Gyugimaru and Zoro suggests that the one-eyed swordsman will focus on transform his blades in permanent black ones, which if before seemed something that the blade possessed as his own characteristic, now we discovered is actually derived from Haki. This will of course considerably increase Zoro's fighting potential, not only because of the power-up of the blades, but also because the process will probably allow him to get stronger by itself. And I think that this way of making a swordsman stronger by training with his blades is genius, because after 900 chapters it introduces a new, specific and incredibly adapted way of getting stronger, consistent with everything we saw before. And this is one of those aspects that make One Piece incredibly solid in terms of the plot and the story. But the brilliancy of this development lays also in the way this opens or gives much more value to the possibility Zoro will actually change Shusui with another sword in this arc, and the other sword I'm talking about is of course the Nidai Kitetsu. I mean, it's not so improbable that out of respect for Yuma or as an exchange to be trained in the black sword thing, he will leave Shusui in the place it truly belongs, and all of this will actually make him only the person who retrieved that stolen national treasure and brought it back. At the same time, the cursed Nidai Kitetsu doesn't have any owner, and Zoro acquiring it makes a lot of sense, especially considering that the only swords that have a theme in One Piece are the Kitetsu, which are associated with a demonic theme, suiting very well Zoro's character. Also, there are exactly 3 swords of that type, and since the only person in the One Piece world who uses 3 swords is Zoro himself, this looks more than a simple coincidence. But Gyugimaru is also generous of intel about the Wano country itself. Indeed, from him we discover that centuries ago it was known as the country of gold, which doesn't make sense if we look at it now because there is any gold to be found, but it makes a lot of sense considering its connection with Shandora. Indeed, one of the most important poneglyphs in the world is in Jaya, and was protected by the Shantians at the cost of many of their lives. But we know all poneglyphs were made in Wano, which means that the stone pointing Poseidon's location was moved from Wano to Jaya, and since we now know that the land of samurai was once full of gold, it doesn't look so unlikely that the city of gold itself was originated in Wano. This opens a lot of possibilities of speculation about the Void Century, and overall suggests a much stronger connection between the two lands than what it seemed before. Also, even if Gyuku's information can't come from that period that was erased from history, Shandia's gold does come from that forbidden century, and if it truly came from Wano, then the land of samurai was the city of gold even in that erased past. But the discoveries of the Oyagi Bridge don't end here. Indeed, we finally have the confirmation Komurasaki is still alive. And since we know Otoko was left by Nami and Robbie in the Pleasure District, it looks like after what happened at Orochi's banquet, she was brought there. And this gives the obtained confirmation that Kyoshiro is actually on her side, which probably means he is on the Kotsuki side of this battle, suiting with how the other guests in the Shogun's palace interpreted these actions as a way to gain Orochi's trust. But this situation also confirms, if it wasn't clear before, Komurasaki's true nature, which, as I said in multiple videos before, allows to see her actions of deceiving her clients in a different light. She most likely thought they deserved that kind of treatment, maybe because of something that happened in her childhood. We have to remember that if she is Kotsuki Iori, she lived a very difficult childhood, and for this reason she kinda used her beauty as a weapon to fight and defeat them. But since all of that was pretty much expected, I was much more interested and surprised by the appearance of Kamatsu, because it is the character Oda deceived us with, is the character that he used to make us think he was actually Kawamatsu. The Oden retainer we now know is actually in Udon prison, with the mangaka using his hairstyle and a similar name to tell us again the lesson that we should never jump to conclusion basing on unclear hints. But we now know he is actually Orochi's personal assassin, and this could create a relationship between his wants and some of Oden's retainers, since he could have acquired them during the fall of the Kotsuki clan 20 years ago. In any case, the fact that the Shogun only ordered to kill Otoko means he doesn't know Komurasaki is still alive, which makes Kyoshiro's position even clearer if possible. In the end, the main element for the developing of the plot in this final part of the chapter is Zoro's meeting with Komurasaki, which is something that I expected and discussed about in many videos before, because for how Mugiwara's swordsman was behaving as a wandering criminal and for his contrast with the Yakuza, I thought he was the one that could better represent in this Wano arc Shirai Gonpachi, who is the historical man Komurasaki truly loved and who I always thought would have had a part in the plot. And in this meeting what I appreciate is how Zoro continues to maintain his kinda unique approach to things in One Piece, which is halfway between the samurai way, so the Bushido, values, virtus, honor, and a pirate way, the way that only egoistically asks for what one wants. Indeed, the swordsman didn't really care about them being killed, but he also didn't really want to see that, so he found a compromise by making Komurasaki buy his help with food and booze. And I really like this way of acting, because it always reminds you that the protagonists are pirates. The protagonists are traveling for their own sake, goals and dreams, and if they do something for someone else, there is always an egoistical reason behind. And as I said, with Zoro this becomes incredibly interesting because it mixes up with his Bushido. An important thing that instead comes from Komurasaki's side of this chapter is her reaction to Zoro's three swords style. It could be she was just surprised, because I mean, who uses three swords putting one of them in the mouth? But it could also be that she already knew that style for some reason, and this could deepen again the connection between Zoro and Wano that we all expect, and we all also expect to see sooner or later in this arc. So overall, the sensation is that this chapter is the first one of a series containing very important information and actions for what will come next, with part of the attention focused on how the situation between the supernova in the capital will develop. Indeed, we have to remember Beppo's group was caught, and so it's very likely Low's next moves will make him interact again with Hawkins and Drake. And since also Kyoshiro and the Yakuza seem to have a very delicate position, there is a lot of stuff going on all over the country in this moment. And until we wait the next chapters to see how Oda wants to move all that, that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching, don't forget to leave a like and make sure to subscribe. See you next time. Jane!